Grumpy Smit. Once upon a time, in a small village near the Nile River, there lived a boy named Smit, known as the grumpiest person in all of Egypt. Smit was different from other boys. While other children laughed, played, and enjoyed their days, Smit had a peculiar and strange talent that could find something to complain about in everything. He grumbled every day, making everyone around him tired and weary. The sun was too bright, the water was too cold, the birds were too noisy. His most frequent phrases were, "I hate this," and "Why is this happening to me?" Despite the efforts of his neighbors, friends, and even his family to please him, nothing worked. When his mother asked, "Would you like some sweets?" Smit would grumble, "No, they're too sweet." When his friends asked, "Do you want to play soccer with us?" he'd respond curtly, "No, I'm too tired." Gradually, the villagers began to avoid Smit. They started calling him Grumpy Smit, and he spent most of his time alone, mumbling and complaining to himself. One day, as Smit was walking along the Nile, grumbling as usual, he stumbled upon an old, abandoned well hidden away in an isolated spot. The well looked ancient, with vines wrapped around it, and a sign hanging nearby that read, "Make or wish." Smit rolled his eyes and grumbled, "This is probably useless." But something stopped him in his tracks. "Well, I've got nothing to lose," he thought. "I wish everyone could see just how annoying the world really is." Suddenly, there was a loud splash. Smit jumped back in surprise, as the well began to bubble and colorful smoke rose from it. Out of the smoke emerged a chubby little fairy with a big smile. "You've awakened me. I am the great well fairy. What is your wish, young master?" Though startled, Smit quickly returned to his grumpy demeanor. "I already told you my wish," he snapped. "I want everyone to see how irritating the world really is." The fairy chuckled and asked, "Are you sure that's what you want? Wishes don't always turn out the way you imagine." Smit crossed his arms and replied, "Yes, I'm sure." "Very well," said the fairy with a wink. With a snap of her fingers, the fairy disappeared, leaving Smit alone by the well. The next morning, Smit woke up to strange sounds. It wasn't the chirping of birds or the gentle rustling of the wind. It was the sound of people arguing. Rubbing his eyes, Smit looked out the window. To his amazement, everyone in the village was complaining. The baker was grumbling that the bread was too soft. The fishermen were whining about catching too many fish. And even the children were arguing with each other. Smit couldn't believe his ears. It was as if everyone had become just like him. At first, he found it amusing. "Finally, people understand me," he thought. But as time went on, the village became unbearable. Small disputes between neighbors escalated into major fights. Everyone at the market complained about the prices, and even the slightest inconvenience led to an argument. One day, Smit saw the kindest old woman in the village, sweeping the street, muttering complaints to herself. "This broom is too heavy. And why do I have to sweep every day? It's so annoying." This was a woman who always smiled and helped others. But now she was filled with complaints. Seeing this made Smit feel heavy-hearted and sad. Smit went to his friends and asked, "Do you want to play soccer?" But his friends just turned away, saying, "It's too hot, and we're too tired." For the first time, Smit was terrified. He realized that everything had happened because of the wish he had made. But he thought, it was too late. No one was happy, and the constant grumbling made Smit feel even more lonely and miserable. He began to miss the laughter and smiles. I did this to the village, he whispered to himself, tears welling up in his eyes. That evening, Smit returned to the well. But this time not out of curiosity, he was full of despair. He knelt down and looked into the well, crying out desperately. Please, please let me fix the mistake I made. This isn't what I wanted. But the well remained silent. Smit realized just how much misery he had caused everyone. I created this mess, so I must fix it, he sobbed, vowing to himself. Smit stayed by the well for days, pleading for his wish to be undone. He didn't eat or sleep, continuously crying and begging the well for forgiveness. He wished over and over again, but nothing happened. Smit was on the verge of giving up. I ruined the village, he whispered softly, lowering his head in tears as he prepared to leave. Just then, a gentle light rose from the well. The fairy reappeared, but this time with a serious expression. Smit, I have felt your sincerity, but a wish is a powerful thing. Undoing a wish is not easy. Do you truly desire change? And accept the responsibility that comes with it? The fairy asked. Smit wiped his tears and nodded. Yes, I was wrong. I want to make everything right. I now realize that the world is filled with more things to be grateful for than to complain about. The fairy nodded in agreement. Very well, Smit. But remember, magic won't change you. The change comes from your choices. With that, the fairy snapped her fingers once more. The sun shone brightly again, the birds sang joyfully, and the villagers were happy once more. The complaints vanished, and the village returned to its peaceful state. From that day on, Smit made a promise to himself. Whenever he felt like complaining, he would instead look for something to be grateful for. At first, it wasn't easy. But soon, Smit began to see the world from a new perspective. When the sun was too bright, he smiled and thought, it's such a beautiful day. When the water was too cold, he laughed and said, at least it's refreshing. When the birds were too noisy, he listened to their songs and thought, what a joyful sound. The villagers noticed Smit's change and soon grew to like him. He was no longer the grumpy boy. He had become a kind, cheerful, and thoughtful friend. The nickname Grumpy Smit disappeared, and instead, the villagers started calling him Sunny Smit. Smit realized that while it's easy to find things to complain about, finding things to be grateful for is far more rewarding. And from that day on, Smit lived a happy life, spreading joy and laughter wherever he went.